Hi everyone, in this video lecture we are going to be talking about the process of photosynthesis. So we're just going to start out by talking about the kinds of organisms that perform this process of photosynthesis. And the first one that I want to start out with is probably the one that's most familiar to us all. So the category of plants is going to include things like trees, things like shrubs, any sort of leafy green thing that you're thinking of is going to fall under this category. But also algae also perform photosynthesis, and there are a lot of different kinds of algae. They're kind of protist. Some algae are single-celled. Some are sort of simple, have a simple multicellularity. So you could think of things like seaweed as being a major example here. But algae are another kind of organism that performs photosynthesis. And then finally, some bacteria also have this process happening. So not all bacteria do photosynthesis, but some do. And one of the major kinds that do photosynthesis are called cyanobacteria. There are also purple bacteria. So specific kinds of bacteria are also able to perform photosynthesis. So when we're thinking about these organisms and they're doing this process called photosynthesis, why are they doing it? What's the draw? What are they getting out of it? The main thing is that by doing photosynthesis, they're able to make their own food. And this is going to come in the form of sugar molecules that the plants are producing. So, any organism, be it a plant, be it a human, be it a squirrel, needs energy in order to live. So, all the things that go into staying alive, things like growth, things like making reproductive structures, maintenance, repair, all of this takes energy. And there are sort of two main ways that organisms can get this energy that they need to live. One way is that you can eat other things. So if you eat food to get energy, that's what we do. That's one option. But these photosynthetic organisms instead make their own food. So we call these kinds of organisms that make their own food autotrophs or producers. So you could think producing their own food. And autotroph, auto means self, and troph means feeding. So, self feeding. So, autotrophs and producers are these organisms that are making their own food, and this is usually going to be happening through this process of photosynthesis. So, in the next slide, we're just going to get into some of the more of the details about what goes into the process of photosynthesis in terms of the molecules that are required and what we get out of it. So, if we were looking at this, in really a lot of detail, there are thousands of chemical reactions that go into making this process work. But we're just going to focus on a big picture overview. So, what does photosynthesis need in order to happen, and what does it produce? And I'm actually going to focus first on the outputs. So what is created from photosynthesis, and then we'll get into inputs second. So I just want to focus on the outputs first because the big main point of photosynthesis is that we're making glucose. We're making sugar. So glucose is the major point of photosynthesis. Why plants and algae and some bacteria are doing this process in the first place. It's to make this glucose. So this is the food that photosynthetic organisms are making. And as we're making this glucose, we also produce oxygen as a waste product. So making oxygen isn't the point of photosynthesis, but it's just created in the process of forming this glucose. So we release oxygen gas as photosynthesis is occurring, or we don't release it. Photosynthetic organisms release oxygen as a waste product as this process occurs. So when we're thinking about the structure of glucose, if we look at the chemical formula for glucose, it's C6H12O6. So we've got carbons, we've got hydrogens, and we've got oxygens. So when we're making this glucose molecule, um, where are these molecules coming from? Where are these atoms coming from? So they're actually coming from carbon dioxide, which has carbon and oxygen, and from water, which has hydrogen and oxygen. So, by sort of gluing these two molecules together, carbon dioxide and water, we're able to form glucose. So, hopefully, that makes it there and not a surprise that two of the inputs that we need in order for photosynthesis to happen are carbon dioxide, and that's going to come from the atmosphere, and water, and that's going to be absorbed by the plant's roots. So we're sort of gluing these two molecules together to make glucose. But this process requires energy. It needs energy in order to occur. And that energy is going to come from the sunlight. So sunlight is going to give these photosynthetic organisms the energy that they need to glue together carbon dioxide and water in order to form glucose. And then we'll make oxygen as a byproduct. And there are special pigment molecules in the leaves, and these pigment molecules are called chlorophyll. And this is what gives plants and algae the green color that they have. So this next slide is just showing the same information in a little bit of a different way. So same thing, inputs, carbon dioxide and water. We need the energy from the sun, and then we're forming glucose and oxygen. And this is just showing the process sort of with the where they're happening in the leaves. So water coming in through the roots, and oxygen and carbon dioxide are being um, taken in the case of carbon dioxide, or released in the case of oxygen through little pores that are in the leaves. So, if we're thinking sort of zooming in to a leaf structure, I just talked about these little pores that you'll find in the leaves, and the technical name for them are that they're called stomata. And so, any sort of gas exchange is going to happen through these pores. So, like I said, carbon dioxide is going to come in, and oxygen is going to come out. So, stomata are just little holes in the leaf that let gases come in and out. And then we're also going to use these veins, and these are going to do sort of two main things. One thing is that they're going to carry water from the roots up to the leaves where photosynthesis is happening. And they're also going to carry the sugars that are made um, to other parts of the plant. So veins are just sort of these transport highways that are going to move molecules like water and sugar around. And then if you sort of zoom in even further and look at one particular plant cell, you'll see all of these green dots or blobs. And each one of these is an organelle that's specific to plant cells called chloroplasts. And inside of a chloroplast, you'll see these stacks of, they kind of look like macarons or pancakes. I don't know, little stacks of things. And these are where the actual reactions that are required for photosynthesis to happen, that's where those reactions are going to be happening. So chloroplasts are an organelle, and they're found in any photosynthetic tissue. And this is where the chlorophyll, that green pigment, is going to be happening, because you need chlorophyll to help capture the sunlight that is required for photosynthesis. Okay, so this is the last slide in this video lecture, and it's just going over two of the main reasons why photosynthesis is really, really important. So one thing is that photosynthetic organisms are what are called primary producers, and this means that they're providing the chemical energy in the form of sugars, or we could just say food, that's going to support every ecosystem or food chain on the planet. So photosynthetic organisms are making their own food, so that's going to support themselves, right? So plants are making their own food, and that lets the plant live because it's making its own food. But if you think of something that eats plants, so maybe something like a caterpillar, it's eating the plants to live, so it's still getting its energy from these photosynthetic organisms. And then maybe a bird is going to eat the caterpillar, and you can still trace back that energy that the bird is getting from eating the caterpillar back to the plant as the original source of energy. So primary producers are sort of the starting place for all the chemical energy that's going to enter the food chain. So they're converting this light energy from the sun into chemical energy that's going to support different ecosystems. And then the other big thing is that we said that the process of photosynthesis creates oxygen gas as a byproduct. And all of the oxygen that's in our atmosphere that we need to breathe um, came from plants. So before plants evolved, there wasn't oxygen in the atmosphere. So we can thank photosynthetic organisms for the air that we breathe, and that we and a lot of other organisms rely on for respiration. So these are just two of the reasons that photosynthesis is really, really important. And we'll talk more about this in class later. So I'll see you all soon.